Why doesn't glue glue inside of glue but then glue outside of glue glue glues? That's the question that I asked myself today because I didn't know the answer, and it's so simple, so let me explain it to you. Most glues are made out of two materials, synthetic polymers and a solvent, which are just overcomplicated words for an adhesive material and water. And the water is what keeps it liquid, so actually our only goal is to remove the water. And there are two main ways how we can actually remove the water from the glue. One is evaporation and the second one is absorption. And how do we do this? We evaporate using air and we absorb by the material that we put the glue on. So as you might have noticed, if you make the layer too thick, because the air doesn't have access to the molecules of the glue that are inside of the glue, so it doesn't have access to so much water, the glue doesn't solidify so fast because it doesn't have enough to evaporate on. But if you make the layer thin, the air has actually access to all of the water molecules that are there, so it evaporates faster and actually sticks faster. And the absorption, which is basically like the sponge effect, where if you put it on the right material that acts as a sponge, it actually absorbs the water from the material that you put it on. Because if you put it on something like a stone, it will never stick, right? Because stone doesn't absorb water very well. But if you put it on something like cardboard, paper, or wood, it absorbs the water very well. So the choice of material is also really important, because if the material acts as a sponge, it extracts the water extremely well. So to put it simply, if enough was evaporated or absorbed, the glue sticks. But how do we then glue the materials that are not acting as a sponge? Well, we use superglue. And the thing that bothers me the most is that superglue actually works the exact opposite of normal glue, because it's made out of cyanoacrylates, which you can imagine as just Lego bricks floating around in a liquid of a chemical composition. And the Lego bricks are actually reactive with hydroxide ions, which is the H in water. And when these Lego bricks get into contact with water, they actually start causing a massive chain reaction across the whole chemical, causing it to solidify, which then glues the part together. That's why it's super easy to stick your fingers, because your fingers have a lot of moisture on the top. But how does it then not stick to the bottle inside of it? Well, there are two main parts that cause this. The first one is that it's actually kind of airtight, so no air enters in or out. And if some does, the glue cannot stick to itself, so it has no way of sticking to itself, and the walls cannot be actually stick to, because the walls are actually made out of something called polyethylene, which is a material with a very low energy surface, which basically means that it's just too slippery for the glue to stick on it. And I find it amazing how science always explains all of these things to me that I get curious about. And perhaps my explanation wasn't perfect, so if you know anything more, drop it in the comments, and this was the explanation of Innovitech.